Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Discovering Multifamily podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Scandariato with Red Knight Properties. And today we have a special guest with us. He was kind enough to invite me on his podcast the other week, Colin Douthit. And he is with Atlas Property Management. He's the owner there in Kansas City. He's also a contractor and a real estate investor. And today, what we're going to talk about is how Colin started his property management company, why it made sense for him, and how he's grown it over the years. Some of the tips that he has experienced over the years growing his company. How did he build his team, etc. So, really want to thank Colin for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Anthony, and hope that we can bring some value with this discussion, and maybe people can learn from some of my mistakes, and I can share some knowledge along the way.
Sure. So tell us about your company and tell us how you got started and where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are here in Kansas City, in the metropolitan area. For those of you who don't know, Kansas City straddles Kansas and Missouri. So our office is in a suburb on the Missouri side, but Kansas City as a whole is kind of where we're at. Right now I'm co-owner of Atlas Property Management, of Atlas Construction, and I'm also a real estate investor. And, the question is kind of how did I get to where I am? We currently manage 620 doors, and, we're staring down based upon what's in our pipeline, around 1,000 by the end of February of 21. So, how did we get here? I don't own all of those doors. I haven't syndicated all of those doors. I got started in the industry by being an investor. Started with some smaller multifamily, some single family, that sort of thing, and started to grow my own portfolio. Brought in some partners, raised a little bit of funds from some family, that sort of thing, and got up to about 60 or 70 units under management slash ownership. And my partners were still working their W-2 job, and I was just kind of the managing partner for the LLC, managing the properties, doing the showings, collecting rent. At the very beginning, I was the maintenance guy. I kind of did it all. And as that grew, it started to become a pretty time-consuming process, as anybody that's done property management can understand. And so we started looking, and I started thinking, well, what if I started my own property management company and I could third party manage just enough to where I was having enough income to pay for my property manager. So I'd essentially be getting my properties managed for free, like kind of a break even proposition, which is never really the ideal way to start a business. If I were to, look back on it now. However, I was talking to somebody about it, like, hey, I know somebody I think that wants to sell their property management company, and they were around 400 doors at the time. So started having that discussion with that gentleman, who's another shop here in Kansas City. And as we were going along, getting kind of through LOI, but we didn't make the deal, didn't get across the finish line. Moral of the story, apparently there's a very high fail rate in mergers and acquisitions, which I was naive to as I was getting started on that journey. But it allowed me to see the inner workings of a property management company from the financial side and a little bit on how to structure it. And I was like, I like the real estate industry. I have some connections. I do want to pursue having my own PM company, kind of with my initial goal in mind, but it really grew after that. And we've grown, from my 60 or 70 doors, and then, I've rapidly expanded from there. I'm an engineer by trade. So is my partner, Adam. We both have construction experience, both kind of civil engineers. And so the next logical step for us, for me, was construction. I was kind of flying solo by myself. I started a construction company. It wasn't performing the way it should be, but we had a ton of opportunities between value add, rehab, and maintenance. And kind of at the start of COVID, actually, is when a little bit before COVID's hit, Adam and I were having this discussion. We're like, well, I was like, you should come join me. And so, we got Atlas Construction up and running, and he really handles the operations there and has done a great job with that. And then I focus on the property management side, and we co-own everything, and we have very complementary skills. And that's kind of gotten us to where we're at today with 600 doors. And in the last 6 months or so, we've flipped or rehabbed 50 plus units.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So can you talk about how do you, and I haven't really talked to anybody about this, but how do you, everybody kind of has some idea of how to generate leads for acquisitions when they're trying to buy something, buy a property. They talk to brokers, they network, they go on LoopNet. There's so many different ways, right? They send out mailers. How do you find property management clients?
uh, well, that's the trade secret right there. I can't give it all away. No, I've had a lot of success just because of networking.
Same thing.
I have not sent out mailers. I have not tried to poach existing business from other property managers. I have focused on the acquisition side. I work with brokers, and I want to be the referral when a broker is going to close a fourplex, a 20 unit, or a 100 unit deal. I want them to say, you need to talk to Atlas and
Sure.
have them in your pocket as we're starting to evaluate properties.
Sure. That makes sense. And so
Mhm.
talk about your team. So your team, you have the two partners, the two of you. Um,
Yep.
so how does each property work? What's the lowest amount of units will you take? What's the maximum amount of units would you take under one roof? Um,
hmm
Talk to us about that. And I guess from, if you would take a fourplex, how is that staffed differently than a 200 unit complex?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we currently have everything from single family houses on up, right? So single family house, duplex, fourplex, 10, 16, 20, 50. We're getting ready to bring on 171 units in January on one complex. So how are those staffed differently? In-house in the office, we have um, 3 property managers. So they will get assigned to a different property, right? So you are working with this owner, you're working with this geographic area, fill in the blank there. So the owner and that property manager then have the daily relationship. The 171 units, we are going to have somebody on site there, and they're going to have the on-site office, and they will be that'll be the on-site staff, and they'll manage that whole complex there. Additionally, we have another PM that's off-site in a part of town where there's a lot of voucher tenants, and she's on a building that's about 40 units, but there's a number of other buildings that we have within 2 miles of there, and so she just kind of handles all of those, just strictly voucher tenants. She's kind of just our expert with that niche in that part of town, and we're getting ready to bring on another 100 units in that area in February. So it's been good to have her plugged in that area, and that kind of be her specialty there. In addition to that, for all of our non-voucher tenants, we have a leasing agent. So she's commission based, and she shows all the properties, prepares all the leases, does the background checks, employment verification, landlord verification, etc., and then does the move-in inspections. We also have a maintenance coordinator that handles all incoming maintenance tasks, whether they're coming in through the phone or they're coming in on our property management software. And then from there, he manages a team of 7 maintenance technicians below him.
Got it. And how does the accounting work?
So we also do have one more office staff, an office administrator. And we have a supporting third-party CPA accounting firm, bookkeeping firm that handles all of that. So um, our maintenance guys track their hours. They track, the hours, and then they buy stuff at Home Depot. The purchase order, they put the address on there. So once a week, our accounting staff, they are correlating all the hours that went to an address, as well as any materials purchases, to create maintenance invoices. Those then get reviewed internally for accuracy, sent back if they need to have anything updated on them. And then our office administrator puts those all into our PM software.
Hmm,
So the owners can see see those invoices on their P&L statements. Additionally, they can go in through the property management software, click on those, and then bring up a copy of the invoice. And
got it.
then monthly, we're printing off the P&L statement, say you got $1,000 in income, less our property management fee, less $200 in expenses, right, for repairing a faucet. Let's say, okay, here's your money.
Got it. Can you talk about so you manage single family homes. Could you talk about what a property management company would charge with a single family home versus 140 units on a percentage of effective gross income basis?
So there's a couple different ways that gets structured. That's a really good question. So there's another PM out in San Diego that I really respect. He's got a great podcast. I've had some phone conversations with him. He runs Good Life Property Management, and they're in San Diego. So that's a much different market than Kansas City in terms of rent. So they say, we're going to charge you a percentage, 8 or 9%, up to $250 per month with rent, right? So because their rents are so high, that percentage starts to grow so much. So, you could have a $3,000 per month house, and if you're at 8 to 10%, you're going to be, $240 to $300 a month in management fees on that property. So, they'll cap it at 250 or something like that. Here, single family home market rate generally is going to be between 8 and 10% of gross incomes received. So we chose to do 9%, based upon average rents and overhead, et cetera, and the level of service we provide. We think that's a fair rate. Once you exceed 10 units under one ownership or one location, we'll drop that a percentage point just based upon scale that you have with us. So
Got it. So even for a 100-unit building, it would be 8% or so? Would it be like 5, 3 to
once you
5?
get up to that scale, it's really going to depend on the quality of the asset and what your goals are. And, we also have some other levers that we can push and pull, including leasing fees, release fees. Do we have somebody on site? Do we not have somebody on site? Once we get somebody on site, it becomes a little bit different of a pricing proposition there. Some of them, we see other estimates that come through. It's like, hey, you're going to pay personnel plus 4% or personnel costs plus 6%. Everything gets charged back to the owner. So there's different ways that you can structure it for whatever's best for the PM as well as whatever's best for the owner.
Got it. Okay. So in your structure, is it typically the 8 to 10, let's just say, hypothetically, plus personnel, or?
No, I generally don't charge the personnel amount. I find that a percentage fee, that incentivizes us to perform better. We've got skin in the game because we're not making money if you're not making money because it's on rents collected. And then we charge a leasing fee on top of that per executed lease. Generally, those two, that pricing model from what I've seen on other propositions I've seen comparing, what other PM companies have offered for the same property. Ours tends to come in a little bit lower, and I feel like it's a very fair price for, what we're getting and what we're giving.
Sure, especially if personnel is included in that. That's
exactly.
Big difference. Okay, so let's talk about the leasing for a second. How do you said you typically pay? You have someone on, maybe a couple people on staff that help with leasing on a commission basis. So are they taking 1 month's rent? Like how do you structure that? Are you paying that, or is the tenant paying that? How does that work?
So out here, that's paid by the owner, actually. So we are withholding that from the first month's rents distribution. So depending on your unit count, we charge between 50 and 75% of first month's rent for a lease up fee. And then our leasing agent gets paid a portion of that.
Got it. Okay. And again, that's all included in the 8 to 10%.
No, so the lease up fee is separate from the 8 to 10%, right? So
separate. Okay.
Yeah. But so we're like, we'll be at 8% or 9% for this property with a 75% lease up fee on the first month's rent whenever we lease a new unit. Do
you compensate renewals or just new leases?
We do renewals as well. We'll do a 25% on renewals. If somebody doesn't like the 25%, we'll work with them and put in a flat fee possibly in place as well. That's another option.
And that leasing agent, are they working for Atlas technically, or are they an independent contractor?
They're technically an independent contractor. Ours, the way it's currently set up, she's 1099, but she is a machine. She's working 6 or 7 days a week, and we're the only company she's doing it for. And
That's great.
She's hustling. A lot of the showings, because tenants are hopefully at work during the day. She's on weekends and after hours. So
right. Well, especially that many units, it adds up. It
does add up. She was with us when we were just at 200 units. So she saw the vision on where we were going, and she's hung in with us the whole time. So very thankful for her.
Excellent. So how do you deal with, is everybody 1099? Like, how do you deal with the benefits portion? That's a whole, or do you outsource the payroll? How do you?
Yeah, so we outsource payroll. That the guys that do our accounting, they handle that as well. They're kind of like a fractional CFO suite, if you will. So he handles all of our back end stuff, all of our HR, all of our payroll. She's 1099. We have a few maintenance guys that are 1099 as well, because they have their own kind of maintenance companies, and they work for us 3 to 4 days a week. But they're good, and then everybody else is on a W-2.
Got it. Okay.
Mhm.
And can you talk a little bit about you're in Kansas City, all the properties in Kansas City?
Come
All,
again?
all of your properties in Missouri, in Kansas City
Yeah, I mean,
metro?
our footprint is within 1 hour of the Kansas City metro area. So,
Okay.
like the University of Kansas is in Lawrence, Kansas. That's about 45 minutes away from the Kansas City metro. We'll handle that. So, we'll get some of those submarkets. And out here, people are like, man, that's a really big footprint geographically. And it is, but time-wise, due to the fact that we have so little traffic here compared to the coasts, it's pretty easy to travel 50 miles.
Sure. And are you only dealing with multifamily and homes, or are you doing any student housing, like you just mentioned, the university?
We're not doing any student housing. We do have students that reside in some of our units. We're looking at one that's in downtown Kansas City that a community college, we may be negotiating with them to do kind of a master lease on a property there. But right now we're not managing any student housing specific properties.
That's great. So would you recommend any multifamily syndicator starting their own property management company? What kind of advice do you have for them?
Really just depends on what your goals are and how involved you want to be. I mean, I know where you're coming from after our discussion the other day. If you want to have the personnel management and have, skin in the game that way, then absolutely go for it. If I were in your shoes, I would be making it a profit center for the syndication company or for the sponsorship, or however, or even just for you, however you want it. If I were in your shoes, I'd be making it a profit center so that it's standing on its own 2 feet. Um, but if you don't want to be involved with the minutia and the legal issues that go with property management, then maybe it's best just to turn it over to a third party that you trust. It's really case by case basis. We've had out of state guys that have managed stuff out of state, and then they come to us and like, I can't do this anymore. Like I'm done with this. Or even people that were in state, they're like, I don't want to mess with this anymore. I'm tired of it. Can you just take this over? And we're like, yeah, absolutely. You got it. No worries. And, but I know some people that self-manage their own portfolios, or, they'll buy a 50, 100, 150 unit complex, and they'll have somebody on site, and that person reports directly to the sponsorship group. And that's how they handle that. And a lot of out here, at least, a lot of LIHTC developers, low income housing tax credits, they'll keep that in house because the accounting's so complicated as well.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense.
They couldn't afford to pay a third party property manager because of how much markup would be on all the staff.
Sure. No, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. So Colin, as we wrap down the show, how can people find you, reach out to you, learn more about you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website's www.atlas.rentals, or look me up on LinkedIn, Colin Douthit, all over there, trying to put out some good content for people that want to know about investing or the property management world, as we try to make property management a better game out here.
Awesome. Well, I'd encourage my audience to reach out to Colin if you're interested in learning more or interested about property management in general or Kansas City in general. Be a great resource to reach out to. And if you liked what you saw, if you could please give us a rating or a review on iTunes, it really helps Colin and I get our message out to a greater audience. That's just how iTunes ranks the podcast. So we really appreciate that. And Colin, thank you again for coming on our show. We'd love to have you on again in the future when you're at 2,000 units.
Be glad to share with it. Thanks for having me, Anthony.
Thank you.